Welcome to episode 46 of the Gambots podcast. I'm your host, Eric, and this is my co-host.
It's Christian.
On this week's episode, Christian saw It Chapter 2. Christian and I both watched the 2015 movie The Lobster. I saw the limited release movie The Peanut Butter Falcon, and we will end with our Amazon review game. But first, Christian, you saw It Chapter 2 this weekend. First, before we get into that, did you like It Chapter 1?
I did, yeah. We talked about this a little bit during our Halloween rundown last year. I think I like the 1990 version more, and I think that's still true. But I did like the new Chapter 1 as well.
So how do they do with Chapter 2?
They did pretty well. I was not looking forward to this one as much as I was for Chapter 1, just because I don't like the adult story as much as I like the kid's story. And I was pleasantly surprised. I was pretty happy with this one.
So I'm really interested how they are handling the adult story, because the kid's story makes perfect sense for... I wouldn't say It Chapter 1 is really a horror movie. Like, it was scary, but I felt like it was a little bit more of an adventure movie. But I know in the book, they go into left field with the monster and stuff. So how do they handle it in Chapter 2? So
this is, as far as I know, closer to the source material than the original one was. In the 1990 version, they just kind of... They bring all the adults back, and then they're like, well, time to fight it, and then they go back down in the sewer, and they shoot a rock into its stomach, and it explodes. In this one, they get more into the ritual that they have to do, which brings me to my first point, my first thought after leaving the theater was that this was not a horror movie.
What would you classify it as?
Like, it's kind of horror, but not in like a classical, not in the way that you would expect, right? Like, it's not an Insidious, it's not like a Salem's Lot, it's not scary, it's more like cosmic horror, I guess. It's like an H.P. Lovecraft kind of like monsters from another dimension or from beyond space kind of thing. And it's very funny, so it's part comedy, and it drifts into like epic fantasy in parts, because they have to do this ritual, which is like a battle. It's like a psychic battle of wills between the group of kids and the monster, and that's more fantasy than it is kind of anything else.
So this is actually what I was alluding to when I said that this was so different. I did not know if they would be doing the psychic battle, because I don't know how you portray that on film. How do they do with that?
Like, it's not very climactic. I mean, they do their best. So most of the psychic battle stuff is in the lead up. They have to go and search for items that they've left in town that symbolize like parts of their past that they want to forget, and then they have to sacrifice them. And then during the sacrifice, they all have to have like a mini battle. So like Bill has to go back and has a vision of his dead little brother, and he has to kind of get closure and come to terms with the fact that his death wasn't his fault. And so there's little like psychological things like that, but none of it is particularly scary.
So, I don't know if you've read these, have you read the Dark Tower series by Stephen King?
Yes.
So that is like one of my favorite book series of all times. I wish they had not done the Dark Tower already and ruined it, because... they're like, we're going into the weird cosmic realm. You could totally introduce Roland and make this like the Stephen King cinematic universe.
Yeah, easily. So I was thinking about that as well. This would make an excellent springboard for that kind of thing, because Pennywise is like a monster from the empty space between dimensions. And they kind of dive more into the Stephen King mythology in this movie than I expected them to. Between the ritual and they kind of start trying to get into the origins of Pennywise and at least how he came to Earth. And it would be a real easy springboard to just kind of throw right into the Dark Tower world and how these different stories all connect to each other.
Yeah, and Pennywise appears in the Dark Tower series, I believe, in the last book.
Yeah.
So a thing that I really liked about the first movie was I really thought the children actors and actress did a really good job. How are the actors on this one? And then did anyone have any really good roles in this? Performances, I mean.
Yeah, so I think they did a really good job casting this movie. Like, I'll say that at the jump. Every actor that they got to play like a grown-up version of one of the kids was spot on. Like, they did a great job casting adult versions of those kids. James McAvoy and Jessica Chastain are usually outstanding, and they were pretty good in this. But as far as I'm concerned, they were solidly outacted by Bill Hader, which I was not expecting.
Oh, dude, I didn't know he was in it. Bill Hader's in Barry, which I recently watched and really liked. Who does he play in this one?
He plays Richie Tozier, the comedian.
Oh, cool.
And he gives far and away the most compelling performance of the movie.
Were there any Easter eggs that you noticed while you were watching it?
Yeah, so we kind of talked about the like greater Stephen King universe there for a minute, and there are a couple Easter eggs. The arch nemesis of Pennywise in the universe is one of the deities that Stephen King has written about, which is Maturin the turtle, and so they have to drink this tea that's made out of like a psychedelic root, and it's called Maturin root. So that was cool to hear. And then I know I saw at least 2 or 3 like turtles kind of spread through the background. Like there was a turtle statue on one of the teachers' desks in the one scene. So I'd be interested to go back and watch it again to see if, even the first one too, to see if there's like turtles hidden in the background because of the significance to the story.
Yeah, that would be. I should rewatch the first one to see that, because also a big part of like Stephen King's larger universe is, you know, the world on top of the turtle's back, and you know the world stretching and stuff. So that's cool. They're actually putting literary Easter eggs in this.
Yeah, it's just one more reason that it's. I would love to see them use this as a springboard to get into like a Stephen King verse, but it's gonna be tough. I mean, we reboot Spider-Man every 3 years. We could reboot the Dark Tower.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know if they could. How they would handle the movies. They would have to do more than one movie, or they would have to do a TV show.
Oh god, yeah. Well, the original plan for it years and years ago was it was going to be, I think, a movie and then a 2-season show, and then a movie and then a 2-season show and then a movie. And so like it was going to be super disjointed and weird, but like it would have gotten the story told better than a 90-minute like nonsense movie did.
Yeah. So do you know how this is doing on Rotten Tomatoes?
I actually didn't have a chance to look. Do you have it pulled up by any chance?
I do. So it looks like the critic score on this is 62%, and the audience score is a 79%. What one do you fall closer to?
That's pretty fair. I'd go probably higher. I'd stick it around a 79 or 80, because like I said, it was good, and I thought it was good in spite of really not being that excited for it.
And then finally, the budget was between 60 and 79 million, and the box office so far has been 323 million, so it has been a success.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Like, when the first one came out, our theater was bananas, and it wasn't as crazy this time, but it was still pretty busy especially compared to how it's been pretty slow lately.
Yeah, and the first one, too, I think came out of nowhere a little bit, because it got a lot of buzz, and I don't remember its marketing campaign until after it was released. And I feel like this one's a little bit of the same way, where it kind of got a sneak release where I really wasn't paying attention. All of a sudden, it was here. This week, Christian and I watched the 2005 movie The Lobster. Now, this is directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, who I think is probably best known for he directed The Favorite, which was an Academy Award, possibly winner, but at the very least a nominee in a couple categories last year. It stars Colin Farrell and Rachel Weisz. And Christian, what did you think of this one?
I hate this movie. It's terrible.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with you that I very much did not enjoy watching this movie. It's definitely not my cup of tea. So do you want to go over the basic premise of this movie?
I can't believe the guy that directed this directed The Favorite. Like, I didn't get a chance to see it, but it looked great, and by all accounts it was great, and this is terrible. And there's at least 2 of the same actors in it.
You know, I actually am less inclined to see The Favorite after seeing this.
Yeah, 100%. So, the basic premise, nonsensical though it is, people have a certain amount of time in their life to find a romantic partner, or they will be forcibly turned into an animal. And I guess they go to this hotel where it's like a singles retreat where you get matched up with somebody maybe, and if you don't make it by the end of 54 days or 45 days, whatever it is, then they'll turn you into an animal. Like, when I was reading the synopsis of this, it seemed like it just kind of happened. Like, if you hit your 40th birthday and weren't married, you would turn into an animal. But, like, this is something that is done to you. This is not a natural process.
Right, and also in there, and it's not explained very well, you can also get extra days by hunting single people who live in the woods, and I guess it's just people who run away to live in the woods. I don't entirely understand how all those people ended up there. So, in general, I would say this is a take on, you know, a dystopian style future of a movie. I was getting vibes of Clockwork Orange when I was watching it, and that's, I think, the most flattering thing I can say about it. There's just so much in this movie that I didn't understand, and maybe this is one of those movies you have to watch a couple times.
I'll never find out.
Yeah, because you're never probably going to watch it again. But number one, and it's never explained, and I get you don't have to explain everything, but what is the purpose of the law requiring people to be in couples, and then how did they come up with we're going to turn you into an animal?
I don't know. You said not everything has to be explained. Something has to be explained. Nothing is explained in this movie. There are no rules. Well, there are rules, I guess, but we don't know what they are for sure. It's just you're dropped in this world, and there's no straight person to like guide you through it. Like, you know, like every sci-fi movie needs like a straight person who doesn't know the rules so that the characters can explain the rules to them and us then, like, by surrogate. And there's none of that in this movie. They just assume that you know everything already, which is crazy.
Right. And so I think the idea was the first roughly hour of the movie was a show don't tell style of trying to explain the rules they introduce little things here and there. Like, number one, they can't really do anything alone. They have to be with a couple, and then they have the weird dances, and then people meet up, and then they go hunting people randomly, and then he runs away. So I think they're trying to show the rules, but it's still, like, I was confused for half the movie, which is not, I think, a good thing to be for most of the audience. Also,
not great.
John C. Reilly randomly popped into this. That threw me off.
Yeah, John C. Reilly and Ben Whishaw show up out of nowhere. Their plot lines kind of go nowhere. Olivia Colman is in this, who I genuinely really like. This has some of the flattest acting I've ever seen. Some from genuinely talented actors. Like, I don't understand what happened here.
You know, after thinking about this one, because when I was watching it, I'm not putting this on the actors. I think they did their part, and I think it was an artistic choice on the director's part for whatever reason that every line needed to be delivered monotonously and without emotion, and I think they did a really good job of that. Like, but it was a choice that I don't agree with or did not find interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, I don't I wouldn't blame the actors for this either. I don't understand why anyone thought this would be interesting to watch.
Well, I mean, this is totally like an art house style movie, but what blows my mind is this has like a lot of love on the internet, and it just I'm not one of those people.
Yeah, that's wild.
Some other things that I'm just curious from you if you figured out why can't you just go with anyone? Like you'd be like, I'd rather be in a loveless marriage than be turned into an animal.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you can. You just have to be good enough to lie about it. Because, like, they showed that Ben Wishaw's character was kind of successfully doing that until Colin Farrell came back and ruined it.
Yeah, but that's a point I want to bring up later. Like, that really led nowhere.
Oh, yeah. Agree. It's like this movie has a lot to say, but it doesn't say any of it. Or if it does, it doesn't really make sense. Like, I don't understand what this movie was trying to convey to me.
Yeah, while watching it, I put a lot of thought into it because some of the scenes are really slow, so I found my mind wandering. Some things I will point out. I think the movie wanted to make you uncomfortable. Like, the dystopian views on sex and the sex scenes they have in this movie, really weird and uncomfortable to watch. The acting is so stilted that it's and cringeworthy at times, like what they're saying. That's tough to watch. The music is so grating and annoying. They keep doing like the same thing with the violin where they screech at parts. That's uncomfortable. I really think the entire point of this movie was to make you feel uncomfortable about this future, maybe? I don't know. I was uncomfortable watching the movie.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the music. I have written in my notes, is this a horror movie? Because the soundtrack certainly thinks it's a horror movie.
Yeah. And, you know, it's weird, too. The second half of the movie, they go to the Outcasts, and the Outcasts are just as bad as, like, the authoritarian people, where it's...
God.
You have to be... You cannot be in a relationship, or you get your tongue cut off, or you get blinded, or whatever. Like you said earlier, the rules don't make any sense in this to me.
I had such a huge problem with that. Because if you're living in a society where they're like, you have to get married by 40 or whatever the rule is, then the rebels are not going to be, you can't get married ever. The rebels are going to be, do whatever you want. Like, if he was going to go live with, like, the, whatever you want to call it, if he was going to go live with the counterculture in the woods, that counterculture should have been, we're free, not we're equally oppressive in the other direction.
Yeah, it was like, you're right. It was the choice of either you have to be in a couple or you cannot be in a couple. There is no gray in this world or in between.
Well, that goes to basically my very first note of the movie, which is there is no gray area in this movie. Like, when he's checking into that hotel, they ask him, is he a heterosexual or a homosexual? And he's like, well, do I have to decide? And they're like, yes. You cannot go in between. And then when they ask him what his shoe size is, he says like 44 and a half, and they're like, no, there are no halves. You have to be a 44 or a 45. And I'm like, all right, well, there is a commentary here that at least this part I understand. It's black or white even down to shoe sizes. But it's nothing else in this movie really connected in any capacity.
Yeah, I will say I like the second half better than the first half once they got out into the wild and he meets his love interest, because I think at its core this was sort of trying to be a love story. So at least there was some development there. Everyone in this...
and Rachel Weisz is great.
Yeah, she's very good. I liked how she was narrating the first two-thirds, three-fourths of the movie till they found her journal. I thought that was pretty cool. But this one also ends abruptly and is very open-ended, like I think a lot of the themes of the movie are.
So frustrating.
Yeah, so I'll save my thoughts on this till we get to the end, but this is received as an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes by critics with an audience score of 60%, which I am really surprised by.
That's crazy. Like, I saw that in your notes this afternoon, and I, honest to God, I googled it myself because I thought maybe they were notes from last week.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
I could not believe 88%.
I also read a couple reviews, and like people, like movie people love the movie, and I feel like it's one of those things where I'm missing. It's a movie made for movie people. Like I'm missing something in it or whatever.
Man, I like to think I'm a movie person, and this movie was not for me.
um,
Man, 88% is bananas.
It had a budget of $4 million and made $18 million in the box office, so it was financially successful. Is there anything before I go into my final thoughts on this that you want to say, Christian?
I mean, I guess I'll just read my final note, which is no one should watch this movie and every copy should be destroyed. And everyone who was involved with making this should feel bad about it.
Yeah, I'm not going to go as hard, but I will say this movie is not for me. I was not a fan, but there's some people who love this movie, and maybe it's over my head, and I get they're making artistic choices in this, but they did not land for me. My biggest problem is I don't think there is any real narrative structure. We don't meet what's billed to be the main plot of the movie, the love story, until halfway through the movie. It seems like this movie is more of like a dive into a dystopian culture instead of about the characters themselves, which I get that idea. I don't think it was executed well, and what this really reminded me was a literary novel that they just turned into a movie, and a lot of this stuff just gets lost in translation.
Yeah, I had to take 4 breaks watching this movie to go do other things and come back to it.
Oh, it took me 3. I did like 40 or 50 minutes on my first watch, 40 minutes on my second, and then like the last 30. It was a slow going movie.
Yeah, like that's not a good sign.
So I think we're both agreed we do not suggest this movie.
Oh my, yes.
A little bit of a funny story about this. I did not actually know what The Lobster was about, but I had heard people talking about it, and someone described it to me completely incorrectly as being very similar to like the Human Centipede, except the person slowly turned into a lobster. And I was like, I'm never seeing this movie on principle. That sounds horrible. And now, I mean, I was wrong about the premise, but I still was right that I would not like the movie.
I would much rather watch that movie. Alright, so Eric, this week you got a chance to watch a movie which I have never heard of, and is apparently in theaters now, called Peanut Butter Falcon. So what in the world is this?
So I just want to give the premise of this first, because I had texted you about it on Friday, and I believe your exact words were, "This does not sound like a movie that should be made." And it was, and it is amazing. So the premise of this movie is that there is a 22-year-old man who has Down syndrome, who has no family and lives in the state of North Carolina, and he has been put into a care facility for his own good, but it's predominantly an elderly home, so he doesn't really fit in. The main character name is Zach. He has hopes of going to a wrestling school run by a fictional wrestler known as the Saltwater Redneck, and he escapes the home, and on his way meets Shia LaBeouf's character, who has some local trouble of his own because he's fighting with some local fishermen. The two meet up, and LaBeouf's character basically agrees to help Zach travel 70 miles south to the wrestling camp. And so so that is the point of this movie. It talks a lot about, it was heavily inspired by Huckleberry Finn, and you can totally see it while watching the movie.
Yeah, this sounds crazy.
Yes.
As much as I like Shia LaBeouf in some things, like this, I legit actually want to see this.
Dude, I love this movie, and I gotta say, I'm rarely moved by a movie, and this one definitely moved me. Like, I could not believe it. I went and saw this with my wife, she liked it a lot too, and she doesn't usually like movies that much. She was like, I would buy this movie to watch it.
When you talk about being moved, how do they handle the main protagonist having Down syndrome?
I think they handle it really well. So, when I took some education classes in college, and we talked a lot about special education because that's a big area that you have to deal with when you're working with younger kids. Because the big movement is, or it was at least 8 years ago, was you wanted to get kids out of special education classrooms and integrate them with the normal classroom, and so you needed to work with that. And so I think this movie illustrated that perfectly, where the main character, played by Zach Gutsagan, who actually has Down syndrome himself, the idea was we just are going to go put him wherever, and then he's away from the general population. But then once he gets out of the elderly home, and you see it in the elderly home, he socializes with people. He has social skills. He can be with the normal population. But once he gets with Shia LaBeouf's character, you see that as long as treating him like a normal person, he's thriving out there. And I like that they don't make him a superhero. Really, there's one part in it where it's kind of like, okay, that's a little bit unbelievable. But it's not like like Forrest Gump, where they turn him into a superhero, where everything happens to him. He's just like a normal guy, and I think they have some poignant commentary on how we should be treating people who happen to have some sort of mental disabilities. There are two really large surprises in this. Number one was Zach Gutsagan. He has Down syndrome. He has actually been training to be an actor for, I think, about 16 or 17 years. He started when he was in high school. His mom actually had to sue the city to allow him into the special acting charter school. They wouldn't let him in because he has Down syndrome. And he was working in a movie theater and taking acting classes, for well over a decade. And then he appeared in some documentary or something in 2006. And the directors of this, who had never directed anything before, wrote this movie specifically for him, to kind of mirror his path to becoming an actor versus the fictional character's path to becoming a wrestler. And
Oh, wow.
he crushes his role in this one. He is so good. It's, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, if you imagine, I think in general, like someone who doesn't have Down syndrome trying to play someone who has it, it's usually doesn't, it comes off bad. Or if you have someone who has Down syndrome who's not really trained to be an actor, it's not going to seem like they know how to act. Like, he is very good in this role.
Yeah, I mean, you're really talking this up. I'm gonna have to try and find it somewhere. I probably won't find it anywhere right now, but hopefully it comes to a streaming service at some point.
Yeah, I imagine it will. And the second big surprise on me for this was that Shia LaBeouf was amazing in this. This may be one of his best roles I've seen. And I've always liked him, but he blew me away with how well he did in this one.
Well, are there any unexpected appearances besides these two?
Oh my gosh, this threw me off because I didn't recognize them at first until they had the credits come up. But number one, Yellow Wolf is in this. This was the one I care less about, but I'm pretty sure he was a rapper or something. He has a relatively prominent role in this. But the two standouts for me was Jake the Snake Roberts, the WWF wrestler from the 80s and early 90s, who was ravaged by drugs and had a comeback tour basically 2 or 3 years ago by doing DDP yoga, was in this as like a friend of one of the wrestlers. And then Mick Foley was playing a referee in this, which was, I didn't even recognize him at first because he shaved his hair and stuff, so it was pretty cool to see those guys.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. I mean, it makes sense since it's a wrestling movie, but it's cool to get somebody in there from that world. I like that.
Yeah, and so, Christian, I am talking it up, and I do really like this movie. I gotta say, the cinematography is great. It makes me want to go visit the Outer Banks of North Carolina. It's beautiful scenery they shoot. They're just rafting down a river for large parts of the movie. And then the soundtrack is so good as well. I think a lot of it is original. I want to say it's almost entirely acoustic. It's so good. It's like there's no wasted scene in this movie, I don't think. They let the scenes breathe and they all work. It's great.
Sounds like a breath of fresh air after the Lobster.
Oh man, that's what I was gonna say. It's like one of the worst movies I've seen this year, and then this may be my favorite movie this year. Like I did
Oh
really
wow.
enjoy it. Just want to give two more shout outs. Dakota Johnson plays one of the like Zach's caretaker in this. She did a really good job. And then what actually really got me interested in seeing this outside of the trailer was has some of the same producers that did Little Miss Sunshine, which is one of my top 5 movies of all time. So if you like Little Miss
Mm-hmm.
Sunshine, I think you will like this one.
Such a good movie.
Yeah.
Well, do you know what the critics are doing? Do they agree with you? Do they disagree?
Yeah, the critics are pretty much in agreement with me on this one. On Rotten Tomato, they have a 95% critic score and a 96% audience score, and I totally agree with that.
Yeah, that's high praise.
And then the box office, 6.2 million budget, and they've made 15 million back so far on a limited run. So
I was gonna say that's pretty good for a limited release. Like you're not always gonna make your money back with a limited release.
no, and I'm surprised our theater got this movie. We never get limited release movies, and you know it was a Friday night, but it was a football weekend. There's maybe like 10 people in the audience, so I was surprised actually that many people went to see it.
Yeah, our theater will do that every now and then. It'll be like, hey, this kind of movie does well in your market. Here, have this totally obscure piece of cinema, and like, oh, all right, cool, thanks.
So I would definitely say check this one out if you guys have a chance. I really enjoyed it. Alright guys, and since we have a little bit more time, we're actually going to just quickly bring up the ProJared has posted a response video a couple weeks ago about the allegations we spoke about earlier this year. So it's a lengthier video, it's about 40 minutes, and a majority of it focuses on the accusations that he solicited pictures from kids that were, well, from minors, or that he knew were minors or should have known were minors. And I'm not going to lie, he does a pretty good job of outlining why the two people accusing him may not be the most believable people. So the two things he brings up are, one of the accusers at the time said that he had these conversations with Jared. Allegedly, Jared cannot find any of these conversations, and then the kid who claimed that this happened said he didn't have them either. Roughly the time frame, the kid said this happened in 2016, and about maybe a couple months after he said that this had happened in 2016, this kid had wrote a Medium article outlining that in the 4 or 5 months prior to the article, when the article was written, which is the time frame that he had claimed Jared had solicited pictures from him, he had had a brain injury from like a high school gym class and could not actually remember large swaths of that time, and that he was diagnosed with schizophrenia at that point. So at the very least, I think Jared brings up that he is somewhat questionable he's at least somewhat questionable as to his reliability. And then more strongly, the other kid who had made these accusations about Jared, it was Jared provided the full conversations they had, and it looked like the kid doctored out the parts where ProJared had been like, "Are you 18?" and the kid was like, "Yes." So the kid seemed like he catfished him a little bit. I think the idea of should a B league celeb or a C-list celebrity from YouTube be interacting with his fans in a way that they're soliciting nudes from each other? No, I don't think so. But I think his main point was to come out and try not to be come out and argue against that he is a sexual predator of children.
Yeah, I don't know. This whole story was a mess. Like, even when we covered it before, like, it was cover to cover all over the place.
Yeah, well, so a quick just recap if people don't know about ProJared. Essentially, he said he was getting a divorce from his wife. His wife came out on Twitter and said that he was emotionally abusive to her, he was cheating on her, and that he was trying to frame the narrative. And then a lot of people came out of the woodwork and was like, I was part of Jared's nude Tumblr, and then pictures of ProJared's nudes came out, and then essentially the internet dumped on him, and he got kicked out of his own Reddit, and they closed it down, and there's just a lot of memes. So his big thing is he's railing against cancel culture because he says he was framed, and it's hard to argue that. It seems like he was done dirty on, or at least he brings up the specter of the shadow of a doubt that he was people had lied about him soliciting things from underage kids. But I still think it's a murky area with him and his wife. They were actually in an open relationship at the time it came out, and then so it doesn't actually seem like it helps his wife's credibility. But then it becomes a he said she said of, well, we were in an open relationship and she was dating someone, but she didn't want him to date someone. It seems like that probably should end up staying private and should not have been out, and just should have been dealt somewhere out of the public's eye. But it came out. It is what it is. You can argue he's a celebrity, so he needs to be ready for that. I think that stuff's the least interesting. I think what most people cared about were the underage allegations, and then also that the fact that he had a nude picture Twitter he was running, which, again, real questionable to do.
Yeah, like I said, it's just a mess cover to cover. And I said this when we covered it before, but I don't understand why people need to air their dirty laundry in public. Just be in your own house and just stay there.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's one of those things where a lot of comebacks I see to that are, you shouldn't keep quiet about abusers, but this is not a clear case. It does not appear to be a clear case of abuse. It seems a lot murkier when you find out about them being in an open relationship and stuff. So, and then he's alleging that she's actually the abusive one, and then has texts. It seems like we're in a dysfunctional relationship. So yeah, and then that just snowballed. So I just wanted to give a quick update on that since we had some time, and it was, a riveting couple days there earlier this year. Alright guys, and now we're going to play the Amazon review game. A quick recap of rules. Christian is going to read a 5-star Amazon review for a movie from Amazon. I will get 2 yes or no questions to help me narrow it down. I can either then guess or ask for another review. Christian will give me another review. I'll get 2 yes or no questions. I can either, again, guess or ask for one more review. I will get 2 more yes or no questions, and then I have to guess the movie. If I get it on the first review, it's 3 points. Second review, 2 points. Third review, 1 point. And we are keeping scores for the year. I am ready when you are, Christian.
Alright. I picked a movie that I'm pretty confident I remember us having a conversation about, so fingers crossed. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and yes, some people have said there are plot holes, but the big story feels real. It doesn't have a lot of bling on it. Everything is very simple. Everyday actions become tense, and that's a good part of the movie's charm. You easily get attached to the characters, and you find yourself wondering what you might do in similar situations. It won't make you want to live in this world, though. It'll make you cover your mouth and sob into your hands if you're a big old crybaby like me. If it's not a concern for you, the movie is very clean. Not much in it, no swearing, no sexual content. I was worried it would be cheesy with unnecessary gore, but it doesn't even have that. Overall, it's a very cool movie, and not like anything I've seen before. I enjoyed it.
Does this movie take place in a world where people can't have kids?
No.
Okay, I was way off then. I thought I was thinking it was Children of Men.
What a weird movie.
Yeah. Was this movie released before 2010?
No.
Okay, I'm going to need a second review.
Okay. This movie was so gripping. I was tense and on the edge of my seat the entire time. The use of sound was really interesting, and this movie had an effect on the entire audience. Everyone was doing their best to remain completely still during the film. People were even unlikely to eat their food so as to avoid disturbing. That effect alone was enough to make this movie worth it. Add in the excellent acting performances, and you've got yourself a great movie.
Does this movie star John Krasinski?
It does.
Oh God. I always get these mixed up. Is this A Quiet Place?
It is nice.
Okay. I have not seen it, but yeah.
Oh man!
Now that you said that, it makes more. As soon as you started about the silent stuff, because I never saw that or Bird Box or any of the other movies that
Bird
came
Box
out.
was bad.
Yeah, I heard Quiet Place was good, but never got around to it.
Yeah, it was. It weaponized sound. It was very fun. It was like that review said. There hadn't really been anything else like it until they made it. Now there's a bunch of stuff like it.
They should really just do one for every sense. It's like they have smell-o-vision or something, like taste-vision.
Yeah. Gross.
That's essentially just a Disney World like theme park attraction at that point. Alright guys, thanks for checking out our episode. Before we head out, Christian, what are you going to be checking out this week?
I've got a couple things on my list. The Downton Abbey movie comes out Thursday night, and I was a fan of this TV show, so I'll probably watch that at some point. Ad Astra comes out this week, which I don't know. It's Brad Pitt and Tommy Lee Jones in space, and I like all three of those things, but I can't tell if this movie looks good or not. Other than that, a show came out on Amazon Prime called Undone that looks completely bananas, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. So I'll probably dive into that this week.
So this week, I actually have a pretty short week. I'm in a wedding, and the wedding's on Friday, so my Thursday and Friday are pretty much taken up. But I'm spreading myself thin on video games right now. I'm dabbling in WoW. I started playing The Division 2. I'm playing Life is Strange Before the Storm, and then I also started playing Until Dawn in preparation of Halloween coming up, because I've been wanting to play that for a couple of years. So lot going on those fronts. I'm hoping to at least finish either Life is Strange or Until Dawn by the next time we record, so I can talk about one of those. Movie-wise, I am going to try to watch either License to Kill, Dora, or Christopher Columbus. So if you're going to be listening in the beginning of October, Christian and I will be talking about 4 movies acted in by Benicio del Toro, and those are the 3 I still need to watch on that one. So I do really need to work on those on the last half of the month, because my biggest problem is finding the movies.
Yeah, no kidding.
Alright guys, thanks for listening. If you would like to reach us, we are at Gambots Network on Twitter, or gambots.blog@gmail.com if you'd like to email us. If you have a suggestion for the Amazon review game, we probably would use it. Otherwise, if you are listening on some platform that allows you to rate, review, or rate, if you like what you're hearing, please do so. And have a good week, guys.
Thank you.